What's up, ladies and gents? Welcome to the Pod on the Go show. I'm your host, Rez, and we're at the end of the week again. So we are here at Free Game Friday. Thank you guys for joining me and sticking with me. Everybody who watches, in the past, present, and future. I appreciate you guys. Today, it's never give up. That's what we're talking about. That's the whole point of endurance, is to build your ability to endure through hard times, to build your snapback, being able to get back up even when you've been torn apart. Yeah, so it's never over until you give up. That's the only time it's over. If you're playing a game that's different, but in life, it's never over until you give up. A while back, I was running a lot. Right when my first daughter was born, my second child. Back in 2016, I started running every day. So I started with a half mile a day, and then I went to a mile a day. And anyway, what I'm trying to get at is at a certain point, I started challenging myself for longer and longer distances. So I went from 5 miles to 10 miles, and then I signed up for a half marathon in New York. So I ran a half marathon in Brooklyn. And it was crazy because it was all within a year. And at the time, I weighed 250 pounds, but I still did a half marathon. Wasn't fast, but I did it. And you learn something about yourself when you're on the trail day after day. At a certain point, it's just one foot in front of the other. You just have to put your head down. You can't think about anything else. And it's just one foot in front of the other. And you zone off and you begin to learn stuff about yourself. You learn how much pain you can take, how far you can go. What you learn, what's pain and what's an actual injury. Like, do I really need to stop, or does it just hurt right now? And then you get up and you do the same thing the next day. It's amazing, how far I was able to come just by doing a little bit every day. And some days I didn't feel like running that far, so I would stop, or I would walk, or I would do a half mile, or I would do a 5K instead of trying to do 10 miles. But the whole the purpose was to get up and go every day. And it's the same thing with podcasting. You have to keep going because you're going to learn stuff about yourself. You're going to get better. Your skills are going to improve tremendously. So yeah. If you're going to podcast, you have to be willing to endure the hardships. In the beginning, you're not going to get that many. In the beginning, two things are going to happen. Number one, you're going to get a huge spike. You're going to see hundreds of downloads or thousands of downloads. And that's just because people are interested and all the social media platforms are sharing it because it's something new. But then you're probably going to dip down. But you have to continue to go through the dip. Or the second thing that's going to happen is you're not going to get any views for a long time. Definitely not the amount of views you deserve for the work you're putting in, right? So you have to be able to be willing to go through that hardship. Build your endurance, build your resiliency, your ability to bounce back when you get knocked down, to stand up when you fall down, to just put one foot in front of the other. When people are going through a trauma, when people are trying to get off drugs, a lot of times what people are counseling them always just take it one day at a time. Sometimes you have to take it 1 hour at a time. Sometimes you have to take it 1 minute at a time. Whatever is going to work, but you have to break things down to smaller segments so you can handle it and figure out what's going on. But don't give up. If it's something you love doing, don't give up on it. So there's a story of a teacher. It was an art class, and the teacher broke the class up into two halves. First half was to make the perfect clay pot. The second half was to make as many pots as they could in a allotted amount of time, as many pots as possible. So the first half, the perfect half, they started doing research. They looked up different clay materials to make a better pot. They looked up designs by famous artists and sculptors. They looked up additives and the perfect amount of water to add in, and all these different things. And all these different things to make the perfect pot. The second half of the class began making the pots, and the first dozen or so looked terrible. They were misshapen. They were brittle. They, were falling apart. They had added too much water, and then they tried it again and added too little water, so it wasn't forming right. But at a certain point, they started to get the hang of it. Around 2 dozen pots in, they started to get the hang of it, and things were shaping right. Even though they didn't have the perfect clay, they began making a very good, workable, usable pot. Towards the end of the experiment, the first half of the class began making the perfect pot. But they realized very quickly that they didn't have the skills to do so. the muscles in their hands hadn't become accustomed to wielding the clay properly. They would spin the clay too fast. They just didn't have the skills to make the perfect pot that they had researched. The other half of the class did make the perfect pot in many ways. They didn't have the perfect materials. They didn't research anybody, but they had made so many dozens of pots. The skills that they had gained allowed them to make uniform, beautiful, usable, not brittle, sturdy pots. Nearly perfect pots. Just from hard work, just from putting in the work. Take from that what you will. Success is the ability to go from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm. Winston Churchill. That's pretty much it for today. Free Game Friday. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'll talk to you next week. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Peace out.